Hey, Bob, guess what?
Oh, it's time.
It's another episode of Let's Chat Sales.
Let's
after our
chat
hiatus.
sales.
Yes, yes. So it's good to have you back. It's good to be back. And I thought that we'd spend a few minutes talking today about, since this is a podcast about sales, let's talk about the one thing that everyone should be doing in sales. If you had to distill everything down to one fundamental core principle, right?
Sending out spam.
That is not it. No, right. Everyone's fixated on, how do you get down
TikTok
to the
videos.
Yes, yes. No, again, but more like first principles, like an Elon Musk sort of a thing. Like, what's the one thing you should be doing? And the thing you should be doing, the people should be doing more of, is just talking to people, having meaningful, interactive conversations, not pitches, not sales calls, not high pressure, but rather conversations to understand people and their requirements and what they're about and what they're trying to accomplish and what their obstacles are, and being present and listening to them as they talk to you. If I had to boil down sales these days to something really fundamental and core and primary, it would be that that's what you should be doing. You should be having as many individual conversations with people as you can. And that's hard to do because it's time consuming and it takes effort and you have to be vulnerable and you have to do some homework. It doesn't scale.
Well, it can scale because when I have conversations with people, they tell other people that, hey, you should talk to Bob because he didn't pitch me, he didn't sell me.
Yeah.
But he'll help you. He'll listen.
Yeah.
And I think so it becomes a big spider web that's different than the, one-to-one.
That's
if you
true.
Go back 50 years in sales, it was like, okay, I talk to one person, I get one sale. I talk to another person, I get another sale.
Yeah.
We've all become way too sophisticated because of social media, because of being bombarded with emails, with TV advertisements, with radio advertisements, you name it. We've gotten to a place where a sales pitch just isn't going to work for most situations.
Right, right. And so you're right. It does scale in the very long run, right? Mm-hmm. You have to take a long-term perspective with this, but because in the beginning, it doesn't scale. You have to have a conversation. You have to find time with someone. You have to put yourself in the right position where they're receptive to having a conversation. You have to stop and listen. You have to allow for time. You have to, all those sorts of things. It doesn't scale in the beginning, but it has an enormous impact over time. One of the things I like to tell people is that if you talk to 5 or 6 different people in the same general area, in a particular vertical, for example, or in a particular job description, what you're going to find over time is after the 5th or 6th or 7th person you talk to, you're going to find out that there's a whole lot of commonality in those 5 or 6 or 7 people. I mean, they each have different issues and they have challenges and so forth in their various companies, but you're going to see a lot of commonality, generally speaking. And when you do, that's where you're going to find an opportunity. That's where you're going to start to amass some knowledge around that thing. You're going to become an expert in a matter of 5 or 7 conversations, or at least certainly more expert than you were. And you're going to be able to have better answers to the questions, better comment, more insight. You're speaking in their industry terms because you're picking up the industry parlance or what have you. But you're also understanding them in a fundamental way because you've heard it. You're familiar with it now. It's not a surprise. You can kind of anticipate. Now, the important thing there is not to anticipate the answer. Let them tell the answer. And you're going to find that over time, nothing's going to surprise you anymore. It becomes harder and harder to become surprised. And that is an indicator that you're starting to understand the market that you're in. And when you understand the market in a fundamental way through these direct interactions and all the anecdotes you're going to come up with and the specific examples that you're going to pick up, these sorts of things put you in a much better position. And to me, that's the one thing. One of the things I'd love to chat about is what's the resistance to doing that? So what do you think? What do you think
a lot
the resistance
of people are uncomfortable with discussion. Yeah, I was trained as a journalist.
Yeah.
I've had probably by now millions of discussions. I've had some very hard discussions when you're writing a newspaper article and you're saying to the person, we're writing a story tomorrow that says you're accused of this. What do you say?
Yeah.
And you do that and you get conditioned as a journalist, like, yep, this is just my job. So I'm very open.
Yeah, but I mean, like business people.
But that's what most people don't have. They're afraid to go into those places where, what if they tell me something I don't know how to answer? What if they ask me a question and I don't know what the answer is? What if I have to divulge who and what I am? But what I find is in those discussions, the more I'm divulging and being open with a person, the better the discussion is. And the more they start to know, like, and trust me. And then it moves to the business part. By the way, Bob, basically it's like, gee, Bob, you seem like a really nice guy. How can I help you today? Well, I'm looking for people to do this. Oh, I have an uncle that does that. You should talk to my uncle. You're really funny. He would think that you're really funny. You guys would hit it off. You can't have a hit it off unless you know enough about a person to know what might work or not work, right?
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is what's the resistance to doing that? And so what's the resistance to investing time in those conversations?
You have to be open.
I think it's effort. It takes more effort to find somebody and have that conversation than it is to send an email or to post to Twitter, because, you're right. You don't have to be as open. You don't have to be as vulnerable. You don't have to, it's just simpler, right? To write an email to someone. Hey.
It's also predictable. A discussion is not. I have no idea what you're going to bring up in this discussion or what you don't know what I'm going to bring up. We trust each other to do this, but we don't script it line by line.
Yeah.
And I've had people who've listened to me do calls. I don't call them sales calls. I call them conversations. I don't do sales calls because I just want to talk to people. And someone was listening to me and they're like, I can't believe you talked about wine for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But that was what that person was into. We started bonding over wine.
Yeah.
And we've continued to share wine suggestions to each other. And then it led to discussions around business.
Yeah, but you're not, I guess what I'm asking is, what are the things that are the resistance? Not how are you overcoming it, but I mean, what are the obstacles to, why do people tend to do something else other than have sales conversations?
Well, for one, you can track the results, right? If I send out 50 emails and I get 5 customers, I can tell you how much that email got. If I have conversations like we're suggesting, you may not get a sale for 3 years, and you may not even know which conversation it tied to, if any.
Yeah, I go back to the fact that, first of all, I think there's an element of, it's difficult for lots of reasons. It's difficult because you have to schedule time, you have to find the people. That's number one. It's difficult also because there's a fair amount of rejection that's going to happen, or you think there's going to be rejection, right? And I think the thing that I like to do, so that's another kind of obstacle in the way. Another thing I think in the way is you have to be prepared, right? You have to have some level of preparation in place. So you have some questions in place. You have a certain goal. This is what I want to learn. I want to learn more about this or that. That requires some amount of effort. And I think ultimately it's the idea of, like, if I talk to that person, they're going to tell me they don't like what I do. I guess where I'd go with that is, to address that, you'd have to say that you really almost want to look for the rejection, right? If you can embrace the possibility that, hey, this is not going to turn out well, or here's what my goal should be in the conversation. It's not to sell anything. It's to learn more about what I'm up against. It's to find out what else is in the way for me. I think part of the resistance is this possibility that you're going to become rejected, that someone's going to not like your idea. But I think that's really the goal that you're trying to figure out, is you almost want to validate your idea by figuring out what are all the reasons why it doesn't work, and then addressing those reasons. And there's going to be a point in time when you talk to enough people and have enough conversations that there aren't that many obstacles to your idea and its success, and people start to get behind your idea. And until they do, I think you want to have those conversations and kind of validate things that are wrong with what you're trying to do, so you can figure out a way to address those, figure out whether or not the things that are wrong with what you're trying to do are really meaningful or not. And in many cases, they're not meaningful, and you can just ignore them. Oh, my product doesn't do this one thing. That doesn't matter to customers. I've talked to 20 people, and only one of them cares that it doesn't do that one thing. Obviously, my product isn't for that one person. And you get to a certain point where if you have enough of these conversations, what ends up happening, I think, is you start to develop a fair amount of confidence about what you're doing. And in the long term, it's these initial conversations and the confidence that comes from those that's really going to matter to you in the long haul. Because being an entrepreneur, being a founder of any kind of enterprise, it's not for the faint of heart, right? It's hard work, and so I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this idea of, if there's one thing to focus on, one thing, it's try to have with a lot of open, interactive conversations with individuals. And in some of these other episodes, we kind of talk about how you prepare for those and how to anticipate questions and how to respond and all that sort of stuff. But for right now, I just thought it would be useful to just spend a minute and just talk about why folks ought to do the hard work of talking to people.
Well, the visual I get, Brendan, is of a target, a bullseye.
Yeah.
And you throw the dart and you get to the outside and you get closer and closer to the middle as you do it more.
Yeah.
And the middle is the clarity you have around what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And each time you talk to someone, you're getting closer to that bullseye because they're telling you what works, what doesn't work, what they've got to see, how it needs to be priced for it to work in their system. And you can't know that up front. We all have ideas of what we want to do, but my idea of what I want to do doesn't work if it doesn't fit in an existing ecosystem.
And what happens also is when you start to figure out how to dial in on that bullseye, it's easier to find more and more customers that are in that same space. And so what you'll find over time is those early conversations will get you there. And then it becomes much easier to have the next conversation with the right person, and it resonates that much sooner. Hey, I've talked to people like you in the same space. This is what we do. And they go, oh, yeah, I need that. And if they're in the same space, chances are quite good they're going to have the same problems. So anyway, that's why I thought beat this around for a little bit. One more technical difficulty there, but I think we'll fix it in post-production. And all right, so Bob, we should do this again, don't you think?
Yes, with better technology on my end.
All right. We'll see you, man. Bye.
See ya.
That was another episode of Let's Chat Sales, a quick one, of course, and I hope it was helpful. And if it was, please like and subscribe, and more importantly, share it with your friends. There should be something right here you could point to and click on and try that out. It should be good. It's probably good. Certainly short. It's probably helpful. And thanks for listening or watching.